Welcome to Target Market Insights, the Multifamily and Marketing podcast. Each week, John Kasman interviews multifamily and marketing experts to teach you how to find the best places to invest, attract investors, and grow your portfolio. You are listening to Target Market Insights with your host, John Kasman.
Welcome to Target Market Insights, the multifamily and marketing show. I'm your host, John Kasman, and I want to thank you for joining us for another great episode. Now, if you're enjoying this show, I need you to do me one quick favor, okay? Leave us a 5-star rating and review, or whatever rating you want to give us. We appreciate the feedback. We always want to make this show as great as it can possibly be and answer any questions that can help you scale to the next level. And if you have not already, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. It costs you nothing. It just makes it much easier for every single episode to automatically come into your device, wherever you're listening to the show. Now, today we're going to be talking to Chris Arnold. Chris Arnold is joining us today, and he has closed over 2,500 real estate deals using a marketing channel that is very effective but frequently overlooked: radio. Wow. In his 15 years of working in real estate, Chris has perfected a method of micro-targeting the exact audience he is looking for, and then creating explosive radio spots that result in prospects approaching him to buy their homes. This marketing channel brings in consistent and highly motivated sellers with virtually no competition. Let's welcome to the show, Chris Arnold.
John, what's up, buddy? Glad to be hanging out today, adding some value.
Absolutely, Chris. It's great to talk to you, man. People always tell me I have a great radio voice, and it's great to talk to someone who actually is on radio. So why don't you take a couple of minutes and give us a little bit more of a background on yourself?
Yeah, man. So I've been doing real estate now for 15 years. And you've been in the game that long, you start to put your hand on a lot of different aspects of real estate. I love real estate because there's so many different things you can move into or even attach, to the core of your business as well. So I've done everything from building a real estate brokerage, kind of the MREA model for those that are out there and know that. Then I got into wholesaling, fix and flip, which I still run today. I do that on a virtual platform. So we have no brick and mortar office, and I live down in the Caribbean full-time down in Tulum, Mexico. My biggest passion is Multipliers Brotherhood. I serve some of the top real estate entrepreneurs around the country. A lot of those guys, which I love, all fly down here once a year. And we focus really on brotherhood over mastermind. And then I teach radio, which I like to refer to as the marketing channel that everyone knows about, but no one is using. Best way to describe it.
Yep. No, absolutely, man. And that's one of those things where, I think people hear radio and it sounds like it's antiquated at this point, right? Like if I were to approach, and I spent 15 years in marketing. So, as I think back on my marketing time, and this is like with, big brands and clients like Nike and Coors Light and Mountain Dew, and radio is always the last thing we thought about. We would do the big TV spots, digital, social. It's like, oh yeah, we need some radio spots, right? So radio was certainly the last thing that we thought about and came up with. And in the real estate world, I don't know anyone who uses radio. Certainly not. I'm trying to think of all the guests we've interviewed a lot of over 250 people for this show, and I can't think of a single person who's ever said, hey, I'm using radio to find deals or to find leads. So what took you to radio of all things? What took you to radio?
Yeah, we already said it. And I'm just going to connect the dots for the listeners today. And you said that radio is antiquated. It's old. And guess what? So is your target audience. If you were to look and break down, the previous closings you had and pull your demographic, I don't care if it's single family, multifamily, your target audience, your avatar is over the age of 50. And here's the biggest mistake I see people make when it comes to marketing. They're confusing themselves as their demographic. So you're listening and going, well, I don't listen to radio. I stream my music. I have a subscription to Spotify. Well, guess what? People over the age of 50 do not. They do not have Pandora downloaded on their phone. They have two habits that they were raised with that they still do to this day. And that is they watch television and then they listen to the radio. And then all of a sudden you realize, my goodness, you're right. Most of my clientele is over the age of 50. And the very thing that's putting me in front of them is the thing that's completely untouched and unused. And that is radio. It's so funny. Before this call earlier today, I was looking at a multifamily package. A buddy of mine was showing me his slide deck. And I said, tell me about the owner. And it's the same story. Well, he's an older guy. He's not doing well. I said, how in the world did you pick this up? It was somewhere around 65, 70 cents on the dollar. Why would that guy sell at that discount? He goes, because he needs the money. He doesn't want to deal with the rehab update part of this process. And if we would come in and take it off of his hands as is, that's the reason that we picked it up at the price that we did. This was out like in Salem, Virginia. Today I was looking at that deal. So that is the avatar. And that's one of the biggest misconceptions is that our demographic downloads music. They don't. They still listen to the radio, John.
Man, that is a great insight. I mean, we talk about delivering powerful insights on the show all the time. That's one right off the bat. I mean, we're not even 5 minutes into this episode, but radio, you have to understand your avatar, right? We call it our avatar, but who is your target market in regards to the audience? So in this case, the target market, when trying to find a deal, especially an off-market deal, that person is typically older or older, more than 50 years old. Think about yourself or maybe your parents, right? So if you can think of folks who fit this demographic, what kind of mediums are they checking out? Are they reading the newspaper, radio, TV? They're not necessarily streaming live music. They're not on Spotify and Pandora, as you called out. And maybe they're on Facebook, but certainly not on TikTok. So if you're trying to find them, go to a place where they're actually at. Now, I mentioned a few others, right? Like newspaper and TV. What gives radio kind of an advantage for you, or at least in your eyes, over maybe some of those other platforms?
Yeah, I think a couple things. The first is going to be the cost. So let me give you the second assumption that keeps people away from radio. It is, if I throw this question out there, if you're listening, what do you think that your starting cost as a, monthly marketing budget on radio is going to be? I get the number, probably around $10,000. So that is not true. We help people set this up all over the country. And our students are starting out on radio. This is 100 ads per month on a station, starting out at budgets between $1,000 to $2,000 a month. So the problem is people think retail, John. We buy radio just like we buy our real estate at a deep discounted wholesale price. And so most people don't understand that you can buy radio literally around 25 to 50 cents on the dollar of what most people are paying for it. And you want to know when something gets really profitable is always on the purchase. The way you're going to make money on any deal is how deep of a discount you picked it up for. So when you do the same thing on radio, the reason that we see the returns that we do is because we are buying it at a wholesale price. And this makes people step back. It's like, okay, number one, this gets me right in front of the people I'm selling to. And number two, I can literally do it at a starting budget of $1,000 to $2,000 a month. That's crazy. And now all of a sudden the light bulbs start going off. Oh my gosh, how did we miss this?
Yeah, so your point there is that one, the cost is way more affordable than many people think. So that's one thing you want to look into if you're going to reach out. And by the way, a lot of people don't think of marketing for deals, right? Maybe you're just going to go through the broker, but are you factoring in the broker fee? Are you factoring in all the additional costs that are involved? Because if you're looking at this and you don't think the budget's worth it to spend $1,000, $2,000 a month to try to find these deals, I would just ask you to really think about what are the costs that you have to find these deals. You're either paying a broker, finder's fee, you're paying someone else to bring these deals to you. So there's a cost in there. It may not be something that you're paying off the top, but there is a cost that you're paying to these deals. And Chris, what I'm hearing you say is that the way your team operates is because you're buying in bulk, you can get a discount. So this strategy makes sense. If someone wanted to go out and try to do radio ads by themselves, they certainly could. But maybe, your team is able to get an advantage because you're out there buying these ads in bulk, as opposed to, we used to call them spots and dots, right? Where you would just buy kind of certain ad placements. Well, instead of buying that, you're buying in bulk so you can get these 100 plus, ad placements a month, correct?
It's more than that. It's not even the fact that we're buying in bulk. Let me tell you how the traditional person goes about advertising on radio. They're going to call a local sales rep that represents that station. That station is going to send them over a media packet. And typically the person doesn't really realize how negotiable that price is. Maybe they're like, I'll try to kick off like 5 to 10%, right? That is how almost everyone goes and tackles a radio station. We have literally a different backdoor approach that's much, much more effective at getting a discount. We come in and we pull data on the station. We pull these particular reports, things like a ranker or an hour by hour, or what's called a qualitative report. This is the way that lets us know the value of that station based on data. How many people listen? How many people own their home versus rent their home? How many people are over the age of 45 that are listening to this station? And with that data, we don't come in and ask them what price they're willing to sell radio at to us. We tell them what price we're willing to pay based on that data. And you want to talk about putting a sales rep on their heels, come in and tell them that you've got all of that data and that their station is worth X. They're not used to that. But the reality is you can't argue with it because we're not making up numbers. We are creating data-driven, what I would call proposals to these radio stations. And again, that's what's allowing us to pick up this wholesale pricing.
No, it's amazing. And the fact that you have that data available, right, that informs you, that empowers you. Think about it even when you're going to make an offer to an owner, right? The more information you have, and whoever has the most information going into it, you're gonna have the leg up on negotiation. So if you know exactly the demographic that the radio station, serves, you understand all that information, you can absolutely name your price. And Chris, you've built that out where you have that information. You're going into these conversations with these reps, and that's putting you in a powerful position to buy at a discounted rate. Hey, I want to move forward in that process, right? So that's one thing to go out there. You have the ads, they're out there. One, from an ad standpoint, are there do's and don'ts, right? Are there do's and don'ts in our ads and our messaging that we should watch out for, or things that are just really powerful that will hook in that prospective seller?
Absolutely. Number one, we recommend recording the ad in your own voice. Again, there's some outlying situations that might cause you to want to delegate that. The reason is we've been split testing. I've been advertising radio for 10 years. When the consumer who is over the age of 50 hears the voice of the actual owner, there's a level of trust that's created with that. So number one, record the ads yourself if you can. So I think that's important. Number two, our ads actually focus on hitting every pain point for why someone would need to sell. It's a property that needs, tens of thousands of dollars in repair. It's a property in which someone might be potentially behind on payments. I'll tell you a big one, particularly multifamily. It's a landlord that's tired of dealing with tenants and toilets, right? So if you hear our 60-second spot, what we're fundamentally doing is pulling out and hitting on those pain points. So the person driving down the road goes, man, I hear this guy, Chris, come on, talk about being able to buy quickly for cash as is. It's a convenient type of close, no real estate broker, agent, and involved. And he's hitting on the very thing that I, am frustrated with the current property that I own as the seller.
No, it's powerful right there, right? So hitting on those pain points. I mean, that's the baseline of any great message, right? Is understand the pain points, the challenges that prospective customer has, address them. And now you've got someone who's at least interested. From there, do you give them a phone number, an email address? What's the next step in that process?
Yeah, this is the highest quality lead that we've been able to generate to date. So I'm going to pick on, let's say, direct mail, right? And we'll compare there, right? Direct mail is a tactic that works, but what it's going to do is it's going to generate high call volume, but a very low quality lead. We know that over half those calls are people complaining to stop mailing them, right? Stop putting your message in my mailbox. Radio is on the other side of that. It's a much lower call volume, but it is a very high quality lead because no one's going to take the time to call you off a call to action on a radio ad unless they're serious about doing business. We've never gotten one hate call off of radio. We get a lot of compliments. Hey, heard your ad, sounds great. People just have a need to be able to do that. So one of the biggest differentiators is that we capture these calls live because someone is driving down the road, whatever pain point we hit on generated that emotion. That emotion got us to call them. You don't want to send them to a website and track them down via a web form and take 2 or 3 days to connect with them. You get them on the phone right then and you book whatever type of appointment process you do to pick up this deal and get it executed and done.
There you go. Boom. Another great insight there. Doing these calls live, get someone in that moment and set up the next step, right? So whatever your next step is in your process, you've got this live lead. Now, I love the point you make. If someone calls you because they heard you on a radio spot and you're calling out these pain points, they're serious, right? They're not just calling just to get a number or just to see, because they understand that, hey, if I call this guy, he's probably going to have some questions about the property, but we're trying to get to a point where he can make me a qualified offer. And that's the highest quality lead you can get. When someone calls you, they're confirming their interest. They're letting you know that, yep, I'm serious. I'm looking to sell, or I'm looking to resolve whatever my issue is. And if you can help them, that's an opportunity for you. On an average basis, and if you don't have the numbers, that's fine. But just, can you estimate, when you run an ad like this, how many phone calls could one expect?
I mean, every time that ad's going to hit, it just depends, but you're receiving, let's say, maybe around 1, 2, max 3 calls off an ad. That's not every time. I'm just giving a generalized approach to it. But the real question is, what is the overall call volume? The call volume is going to be healthy, but it's not going to be super high like radio. So again, I'll give an example. We run on about 7 different stations out of Dallas, Fort Worth. And those stations for us, advertising 100 times per week on each station, that's 700 ads being run. We can be averaging anywhere between 200 to 350 calls, right? So that kind of gives you an example of the volume that's coming in. And so when that ad's drop, yeah, sometimes you won't get calls, obviously, if you do that math, but a lot of times it's 1, 2, 3 kind of back-to-back calls coming in. But here's the thing I think is really important.
Chris, just to clarify, you're saying 200 to 300 a week?
That's a month, 200.
A month. Okay. Well,
yeah, per month. So that's a very reasonable call volume off of, let's say, something like 7 stations like I'm doing. That's not really high. But the difference is, what do you want? Do you want quantity or do you want quality? I will take the quality calls all day long, because they're not going to bottleneck my back end system, because I have to go in there and filter out, all of the crap calls that I'm getting of tire kickers, complainers, people that are not motivated. So that's a key piece. But here's the difference. Again, if we're utilizing a spam-based approach, right? Text blasting, RVMing, cold calling, etc., you start in a very different position with a seller than when they respond to you off of radio. You are way down the know you, like you, trust you path off of radio versus someone goes, yeah, this person keeps sending me direct mail, not really excited about getting all that in my mailbox, but I got to sell this potential property, so I have no choice to call them. And they pick up the phone and they respond. But man, you got to do a lot better job at that point of trying to better and create that trusting relationship off of that type of beginning.
Yeah, and I think to your point, Chris, like what people may not realize is that when you are trying to stand out and connect with a potential owner, that voice, as you said, if you can do that radio spot in your voice, they hear that same voice when they get on the phone, or they hear, representative of that company. That makes you real and tangible. And even just being on the radio, having a radio ad where they can hear your voice versus just being, a flyer that someone gets that they could easily toss. And that adds that human element, that human touch to it. And I think that goes further than people may give it credit for. And not to mention that, with radio, you can hit them multiple times. When we talk about 100 ads placements per station, well, if someone's listening to the radio and this is their favorite radio station, they may hear your ad, 10, 20, 30 times, going on. So that repetition, I think, is key. If you go back to direct mail, I see it, I probably throw it away, and then I get it again next month, right? So I'm not thinking about you. So it goes in the trash, and unless there's something pressing, I'm probably not thinking about it at that moment. Versus radio, I have way more shots, right? I have so many more shots to get my branding out there, to say my phone number, to tell you my name, what we do, who we help. And right now, I saw a report that said it used to take 7 times for a company or a brand to have their name and their message connect with a potential customer. And now, because we are bombarded with so many messages, that it now takes twice as many times. It takes almost 14 as messages before someone can start to recognize and say, oh, okay, that's Chris, and Chris does XYZ. And now they know if they need something, they can call Chris. So that repetition is another key advantage that I think radio has over, say, something like direct mail. We talked about,
Touch on that because I want to give
yeah,
you.
please.
I'm going to drive this home of why what you're saying is so true. I got a call one time, one of my favorite calls, lady, right? Listening to a classical station. So again, remember, this is not a spray and pray approach, right? The type of music that our grandparents and parents listen to, 25-year-olds do not listen to. So you are hitting your target audience on a station because people are very habitual about the type of music that they prefer. So 25-year-olds do not listen to old school classic rock or old school country. It's just our grandparents and parents that do. That lady listening to a classical station we were on called in and said, hey, I just want to let you know that we hear your ad all the time and that my two kids in the back seat who listen to the ad, right, because I'm just driving around listening to my music, can actually repeat your ad verbatim. And she said, I want to let you know you guys are doing a great job. Think about that. Two kids, they don't care about classical music, sitting in the backseat doing what? Playing video games, staring out the window because kids don't have attention. That repetition was so much that those kids could actually repeat our ad verbatim back to their mom. And she thought it was the funniest thing.
That's crazy. And that shows the power of it though, right? So even if they're the parents, that mom wasn't paying as much attention, even if she wasn't that core demographic, our target market that we're striving for, subconsciously, she must know it, right? If they know it where they can sing it, subconsciously, she absolutely knows it too. And if there were a moment where she needed it or she came across somebody who was looking to sell, you would be the first one that come to mind because you're also going to hit it there. Great points there, Chris. As far as, I want to talk about your company now holistically. So you mentioned that you have a virtual office. You are now actually in Tulum. Your company is really run through the DFW market. You guys are doing a lot of business, a lot of transactions each year. Talk to me a little bit about kind of your company and kind of the deals that you focus on today. And then I want to get into kind of how you manage things because it's we're certainly in a brand new world where a lot of people are now working remotely. You've been doing this for a little while now. So I want to pick into that a little bit more as well.
Yeah. So my overall philosophy when it comes to exit strategy is being a solutions provider. I think people easily target themselves into being a fix and flip or, wholesale or creative financing. I do subject to whatever that looks like. What I've realized is if you want to be profitable off of your marketing, you need to develop multiple strategies. So when someone calls us, I don't care if we go out and list their property because I'm a licensed broker. If we do creative financing, if we do wholesale, fix and flip, whatever it is, because the more diverse tools that you have and you present yourself, not necessarily even as a real estate investor, but as a solution provider to the seller to help them whatever circumstance that they need, I find that you can make your marketing channels a lot more profitable because I find people that are so niched in one particular area that the rest of those leads they get that don't fit that niche of what they're doing, they just throw them in the trash. People do it all the time. Blows my mind.
And that's the thing that most people, it's crazy, right? You get these leads and you have nothing to do because they don't fit yours and you throw them in the trash. At a minimum, you should find people that you can align with, right? And have a strategic partnership. So if you know someone else who does single family or multifamily or, a listing broker, find that relationship because to just throw those leads out, you're already spending all the money. You're spending all the money. You're putting in all this hard work to generate the leads. Why not find a way to monetize as many of those leads as you can? And as you said, that allows you to build kind of a hefty business, right? So talk to me about that. You mentioned that you can, you have the license. So you guys have the brokerage side of things. You can represent, buyers and sellers. You obviously have the wholesale component. Are you all buying and managing your own properties or fixing and flipping as well right now?
Yeah, we do fix and flip as well. So, and we do wholesaling too. So we do a variety of stuff. I just look at the deal and we figure out what is going to create the best profit margin in this deal. So we have an evaluation committee. Every deal that is contracted is evaluated by our committee. and then they determine the best bucket for it to go into in order to get the maximum amount of profit that deal has. So
So you
that's the way we evaluate.
got it. So you got this committee that looks at the deal. Everyone kind of essentially looks at the different ways you can exit, and then you pick the best strategy based on that.
I think it's the best way to do it.
I love it. I love it, man.
You're always getting maximum profit utilizing the very best tool that you have to get that profit.
So for those folks who maybe are at the early stages, right? Maybe just starting to even think about creating deal flow, right? It's a tight market. It's hard to come across deals. So they're opening themselves up to ways to increase the deals that are coming into their inbox, right? Or the phone calls they're getting, the emails they're getting. They don't have the team set up, right? Or maybe they don't have a marketing budget. What is the first thing they should do to start increasing the deal flow?
I mean, if you don't have a marketing budget, that means you can't spend money. So the only thing you can spend is your time. So that moves you over into what I would call time expenditure marketing channels, right? So now you're getting into cold calling, you're getting into text blasting, you're getting into RVMing, you're getting into driving for dollars. You're getting into door knocking. You're getting into those type of things that really cost nothing. You're just, spending time. You're not spending money. I was there. I did it. It's how I built my business. I initially built it being a one-man person, smiling and dialing and doing cold calling. That's how I built my business because I was right out of grad school. I was broke and I had no money, but the one thing I had at that time was time. And so I utilized my time on the phone, pounding those phones to create deals.
There you go. So a lot of strategies right there. I mean, if you have some time, and keep in mind, a lot of this stuff, even with technology, you can put in the time whenever you have it. You may need to time shift a little bit, but certainly if you can find time, you can create time to, dial and smile, as you said, or door knock and driving around for dollars. You have to find ways to do that if you don't have a marketing budget. You said RVMing. I don't think I've ever heard that term. Could you explain what that is?
Voicemail. So you're buying mass lists that fit whatever target. Let's say you're going after multifamily owners, et cetera. The technology allows you to skip the call ring and go straight to the actual voicemail. So you can, hit 10,000 people with the exact same voicemail. And then what you're doing at that point is then you're eliciting a response back off of those RVMs or ringless voicemails.
Got it. Thank you for clarifying that. So lots of strategies there that you can employ if you don't have the marketing budget. Let's say someone has a small marketing budget. Let's call it $1,000 a month. Okay. If you have $1,000 a month, where's the first place that you may want to invest that money?
I mean, it just depends on your strategy. Again, I'm obviously going to be biased to radio because I think that you're hitting hundreds of thousands to millions of people depending on the size of your market. But some of the other places, if you're talking about just having $1,000, at that point, I would consider flipping cold calling into actually hiring some overseas VAs to do those calls for you, like out of the Philippines. So you can actually build a little bit of a cold calling team, a couple callers for something along that. I think that direct mail, you can get a little bit into the game for about $1,000 as well. So I think that that's a possibility. I'm also a big believer in digital marketing. So if you want to go the Google ad route, get into kind of pay-per-click, again, it's not a lot of money, but those are areas that I put my marketing dollars into outside of radio.
Makes sense. And thank you for clarifying that because it's interesting. I was going to ask you, since we talked about that target demographic and we kind of really zoned in on the fact that this person is using more traditional marketing channels like TV, radio, newspaper. I was curious to your perception or the way you look at newer technologies, Google ads and Facebook and some of those things. Maybe just elaborate a little bit more about the way you see those digital platforms and channels playing a role into a marketing budget.
Yeah, if you look statistically when it comes to social media, the older audience is going to be more comfortable primarily on YouTube and, of course, Facebook. You're not going to find them on IG, TikTok, etc. I'm not big on Facebook leads. I think that you can generate a lot of them, but the quality is really low. So I've not really seen anyone come back and tell me they've been super successful off of Facebook. But even older people know how to go to Google and type in something like sell my house, right? So we do know that there's a comfort level for Google. And then if you're optimizing your website and driving people right to a website to create a conversion of a web form, that still works. That works for the older demographic. But that's much different than believing that, your IG or Instagram following, et cetera, is going to work for finding deals. It's not. So I think YouTube works. I think Facebook works. I think that Google AdWords absolutely work.
Awesome. Great tips there. Chris, I want to transition and talk a little bit more about the company, right? So we mentioned that you have this virtual company. A lot of people are working remotely and will be working remotely for the foreseeable future as this pandemic continues to, play out here. You've been doing it for 3 years, though. So as people look to
longer
expand,
than that, I just been in Tulum. So I started building my virtual platform probably about 6 years ago, maybe 7. So
got
just
it.
to give a time frame, I didn't pull that off in literally 3 years.
All right. So you've got even more experience, right? So you've been doing this for 6 or 7 years, working virtually with different team members all over the place. Maybe give us some insights as far as how you manage your team and maybe some of the struggles that you faced when you were first starting to work with kind of virtual employees.
Yeah, I think the biggest misconception that people have, and again, I felt it, it's the fear. How can I control or manage someone that's not walking into a physical office? The challenge you have to realize is I believe people are grown up in 2 different systems in the workplace. You have those that are grown up within the office world. They used to structure, they're trained on structure, be here at this time. There's someone walking around seeing things, and they thrive in that structure. But if you understand people that were hatched and grown up in virtual world, meaning that they've been working from their house, those people by nature are self-motivated. They're self-driven. They do not need to be micromanaged. The problem you have is when you take someone from in office, raised in that world, and try to move them virtual. So the biggest thing I'll tell you is you will be surprised that the virtual people you hire, if they're truly virtual by nature, will be easier to manage than the people you actually had in your office. That is true. I don't really think twice about managing my entire team that I have because they're self-driven, self-motivated, self-managed. Now, did I get there off of hire one? Absolutely not. It takes time to kind of get to that type of place where you have it. But I think that that's a critical piece to understand that that world is really great when you actually hire the right people. The other thing, really practically, our companies run off simply 2 systems from a virtual standpoint. You can use this in office, but we use it virtually. For the operational side, we use EOS, which stands for the Entrepreneurial Operating System, Traction. If you're running a bigger business, you might look at scaling up Vern Harnish, but I find more people like the Traction model. So that manages all of our operations, gives us, the rhythm of meetings, everything that we do. And then the sales side is built off the 4 disciplines of execution. So that is a model that supports the sales side of what you do. So my entire business is broken into operations and sales. The reason I divide those are those people are managed very differently. They are come from 2 totally different mindsets, everything about them, the way that they're wired and motivated. And so therefore we have 2 different systems to be able to manage them. And that creates, in my opinion, a very strong foundation from an operating system standpoint for your businesses.
And you mentioned the 4 disciplines of execution for sales. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, it's a book called 4 Discipline of Execution. It's called 4D as in dog, X for short. And what it is it's the way that you are going to interact with your sales team. So I'll give a quick example. They run a scoreboard system. Again, salespeople are competitive. You do not have a game unless you have a scoreboard. If you go to a football game and remove the scoreboard, you're going to lose everyone at the game because no one cares. No one's keeping score. Why are we out here? So every week we have a meeting and a visual scoreboard is put up. I want you to imagine it like the back of a baseball card. We have every stat on our salespeople. And trust me, you put that information publicly, you don't need to beat up the person that didn't sell. What we do is we come in and compliment the person that really kicked butt that week. The people that we didn't, we just don't really touch on. And trust me, the public sharing of that is enough where a salesperson doesn't get hurt by it. You couldn't do that to an operational person. It would crush them, right? But to a salesperson, it creates that right amount of frustration that like, I ain't gonna let that happen again. Wait till you see the scoreboard next week, because that's how salespeople think. So 40X is that type of process and that type of system for the psychology of the salesperson.
Man, that's big. I really love that. And even beyond just your system, right? If you are in any position where you need to drive sales, you need to motivate people, understanding what drives them. Are they operational based? Are they sales based? Are they competitive? Understanding those dynamics are really key so you can put the systems in place. And it's the reward system, right? Like what's going to get people fired up? What's going to make them excited to hit their numbers or to have success? And make sure you're doing that. And that comes back to being a great manager and setting up the culture of an organization where you can get the results you're looking for. We're going to actually talk to Chris a little bit more about the best practices for running a virtual office. So if you want to hear some of that, make sure you check out our bonus footage. We'll make sure you drop the link in the show notes there. We're going to move on. I've got one more question before we go to our bullseye round. Chris, you've got something called the Brotherhood that you're involved with. I want you to tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, man. So I get pretty fired up about this because I really do feel like we are tackling what I would consider to be a very serious problem. You know that only 1 out of 3 leaders, 1 out of 3 influencers will finish the race well. That means the other 2/3 will fail, will get disqualified either because of a moral misstep or because they get burnt out. And what I consider to be one of the most systemic problems for entrepreneurs is isolation. So if you survey men, again, Multipliers is a brotherhood. My focus is on serving men. Men need this much more than women. Women are much more naturally open to sharing. But you ask men, can you name the amount of confidants you have in your life? Like if the shit hit the fan, how many men can you actually go to that you feel is safe to open up and tell the truth? You're going to see somewhere around 80 something percent will give you a zero. So this is why you see such a failure at 2/3 of a rate with leaders, because they're isolated. They're dealing with it alone. I can't talk to my friends. They don't give me because they work a 9 to 5 and don't understand what I'm complaining about. I can't open up to my employees at that level because there's a barrier of leadership there. I can't dump everything on my wife, particularly if whatever I'm struggling with is going to be something that's going to upset her. So what I do. So what you see in that isolation is what I would call that type of stress, everything that's being dealt with coming out sideways. So you're going to see large amounts of substance abuse, alcoholism. You're going to see things like porn addiction. You're going to see a lot of extramarital affairs. And so what Multipliers is, it's a brotherhood, an environment where men have the ability to come in, not only just grow on the business side and be a beast in business, but we focus also on the core roles that they are required to play as men. Help me become the best father I can be, the best husband, the best leader. Because again, I got all the information out there on to grow my business. But the problem is when I'm struggling and my marriage is on the rocks, like help me with that. Because as I do, guys at a high level, which we serve the top, 5% real estate entrepreneurs in the country, they're not failing because of a lack of strategy. They're imploding because of something internally within inside of them. We see this again and again, story after story, leader after leader that makes these type of mistakes. And so Multipliers is going after the statistic of really increasing the amount of men leaders who finish the race well.
Chris, I absolutely love that platform and the way you described, the goal, the mission behind it. And I will tell you too, I haven't seen the latest data, but I know that since the pandemic has started, we've seen high levels, increase of, divorces, fights, domestic violence, all sorts of things. And I think it's a manifestation of that frustration and what you said. A lot of men don't have that outlet. They don't have someone that they can call and speak to and open up and be honest and be vulnerable and be transparent about the issues that they're facing. And as men, we're not really told that we can be emotional, right? I did an interview recently with a gentleman, and he described, he said thoughts, emotions, actions, and he mentioned that emotions are just the way our body processes in the same way our mind processes thoughts. And a lot of times we're not allowed to be, emotional, right? It's not a masculine thing to do. So to actually be in a position where you can talk about these things, I think is vital, especially when you've reached a certain level of success and the expectations increase, right? Because there, as you mentioned, if you are the leader of your organization or you have employees or you're a senior director in your company, you're at a high enough level where people are not going to give you pity. I mean, they expect you to do well and to not have any complaints in life, to be good. And why are you complaining? Like, you got all this money, you got all these other things, you should be happy. And it's tough if you're still seeking fulfillment or you have other challenges in your life where maybe you're not being the best father, maybe you're not being the best husband, or maybe you have concerns with the business, or again, the current overall economic climate, and how do you position yourself, your family, your team, your company for success for the long haul. There are lots of challenges there, and there are not a lot of people you can talk to get straight advice, and people that you trust who won't, I won't say expose, but who won't, who can protect that information and hold it as confidential, and also give you great feedback and directive of maybe some ways to adjust and pivot. So I think that's a great platform. Can you just tell me more about the origins of this organization, kind of where you're at today, and maybe some of the ways specifically as far as masterminds and things like that you do to kind of help foster this brotherhood?
Yeah, so I've been doing this probably going on about 5 years now. The origin is, my background, like I have a master's in theology. So I utilize business simply as a system, as a vehicle, as a delivery system for impact and transformation. If you were to ask me, do I passionate about real estate? No, I just utilize it, right? I'm passionate about the way in which it allows me to set up my life and the freedoms in order to do what I feel like I'm really called to do. So, but you can't do that right off the bat, when you start your business. So I had made a choice that after being in business for about 10 years, I would kind of lift my head up and make that transition. I'll use Bob Buford's language to transition from success to more significance in my life. And so when that 10 years came up, I really sat down. It was about a 9-month process to filter out all of these different things in which I would begin to transition my time over to something that I felt like was more legacy driven. And so what came out of that process was this problem, and really the way in which I felt like it broke my heart to want to be a part of it. I don't think there's anything more crushing than watching a leader that's hurting, particularly one that doesn't have a place in which they can actually talk about it. Because you put a leader in a place where they can, and you see all of that emotion and all of that pain come flooding out, I mean, it'll break your heart. Because of the first time they felt like they were in an environment where they actually were sitting around with other men that got them, because they're at the same place as an entrepreneur, and they sat in a place of not judging them as well. And again, you see guys respond to that. Like, I just said X. I've never told anyone X. I step back and I don't know what's going to happen. And all of a sudden I'm surrounded with guys who say, you know what? Been there, buddy. I love you. Whatever we got to do, I'm going to walk through this hell with you and get you out of it. And I'm telling you, man, it will break men when you see that, because they've never experienced brotherhood. They never have.
Chris, man, I absolutely love it, man. We'll make sure we share more information about that platform, and if anything we can do to help that, please let us know. We're going to transition to our bullseye round. You ready?
Fire away, buddy.
Give me a failure or an apparent failure that set you up for later success.
Yeah, financial literacy. School never taught me. Church never taught me. My parents never taught me. My first year in the business, I made over 6 figures as a real estate agent. I came in hustling, but yet somehow I found myself with maxing my credit card out. And I stepped back and I go, where did all that money go? And I never really was trained to manage money. And that was very painful. And so I had to dig my way, out of that hole. And luckily I came across guys like Dave Ramsey, stuff like that really provided that education. But man, financial literacy was a huge mistake within my first couple of years of businesses. I didn't know how to manage money at all.
Give me a digital or mobile resource you recommend for your business.
I love Blinkist. And when we say business, I think learning is important. That's part of the business. There's books I want to read cover to cover, and then there are books that I would never have time to read. And Blinkist is an app that allows you to get book summaries, and they'll break them down in about 10 to 15 minutes. And I love it. I utilize Blinkist all the time.
Speaking of books, give me the book you've recommended or gifted the most in the last year.
Yeah. Organizational physics. I feel that organizational physics did for my understanding of business what traction did for my understanding of how to run operations. It is a book that when you step back, you go, man, how did I not have someone come in and concretely present this? It's kind of like Michael Gerber when we all read that book, working in it. Yeah. Not, on it, not in it, or Robert Kiyosaki. I think we all got impacted by that book. I had one of those moments when I read Organizational Physics. It's a little bit of a thicker read, but once you understand the concepts, it's a game changer for your philosophy on any business. I don't care what industry it is.
Give me a daily habit that helps you stay focused on your goals.
That keeps me focused on my goals. That's it. You were specific on that one, so I'll give it to you. I write out all of my goals for the year. They fall into the different categories of my life. Goals, with my marriage, goals with myself spiritually, goals within my business, goals for happiness. I jot all of that out. And the most important thing I do in my quiet time every morning that I do for an hour is I spend about 10 minutes going over those goals and just internalizing them. And again, that blocks me from shiny objects because it anchors me in on what I accomplished to do that year. So I think a lot of people create goals and just kind of throw them in a folder and don't look at them again. I look at mine daily, and I think that that's super important.
What's one thing you know now that you wish you knew when you were starting out?
Coaching and community. I wish I would have known to plug in and put the right men and mentors around me and to put myself in the right communities. I waited 3 years and it cost me too much time because I was over trialing and erroring things that someone simply could have been like, Chris, don't step in that. So I was stepping in everything because I didn't have an outside voice. And so I always tell people, man, coaching and community is essential for every aspect of our life. I'm a huge believer in it.
What are you curious about right now?
I'm reading a lot about YouTube. I'm curious of the fact that it's the second largest search engine. I'm curious of the fact that people over the age of 50 are watching it more and more. And I'm curious of the fact that, creating a following used to only be for athletes and people that had access to Hollywood and et cetera. And now it's like the US Open. Anyone can play the influence game by going and creating a YouTube channel, and it fascinates me right now. I think you're going to see a massive shift in celebrity status going from our traditional celebrities, like musicians, et cetera, to people that built it organically out of their houses. It's super interesting to me.
Yeah, Chris, on that last point, we're starting to see it, especially for anyone who has kids. I mean, my kids, they recognize some of these YouTubers more than, singers and other celebrities. So if you're looking to gain a following, especially for the next generation, you certainly want to understand what's happening on these platforms. Chris, I really enjoyed our conversation today. I mean, you gave us so many great insights from how to leverage radio and why radio is so powerful as a tool to connect with owners, especially knowing that demographic, and how to do it the right way, especially all the actionable insights to not just get that lead, but how to actually nurture that lead so you can get them into your business. From there, we talked about, the virtual office and how you run a virtual team, as well as the brotherhood. You talked about the Multiplier Brotherhood and how you actually have this platform that nurtures other leaders, other men to, be the best versions of themselves and have that resource available to grow. For those folks who want to learn more about you, your business, or even the brotherhood, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
Yeah, I mean, if the radio piece sent alarms off in your head, for a lot of people, it's like, oh my gosh, I need to jump on this. Again, we limit the amount of people per market. We do exclusivity, so it doesn't get saturated like everything else. But the best place to start, I always tell people, start with questions. Make sure it's a good fit for what you want to accomplish, depending on your exit strategy. But to check that out, go to wholesalinginc.com/REI Radio, wholesalinginc.com/REI Radio. Book a call, see if your market's open. Doesn't matter your exit strategy. We all need distressed seller leads. So you can go do whatever you want once the lead is presented, and that's my job to make that happen. For free information, of course, you can always go subscribe at my YouTube channel, Chris Arnold Real Estate. And then, of course, for Multipliers Brotherhood, if you're listening and do a minimum of $1 million a year in revenue, then you can go to Multipliers, that's with an S, brotherhood.com. and check us out. And maybe that's something that we can talk about as well. So,
Chris, thank you for coming on the show. It's been an excellent time talking to you. We hope to stay in touch and talk to you again soon.
Awesome. Thanks, buddy.